Your hosts have earned a reputation as fierce and effective advocates inside and outside of the courtroom. Our partners are experienced trial attorneys who have been board certified in family law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization.
All right. Thanks for tuning into For Better, Worse, or Divorce podcast, where we provide you tips and insight of how to navigate the divorce and child custody situations in the state of Texas. So I'm Jake Gilbreath, and today I'm joined by one of my favorite private investigators, Dave Watson, who is the founder of Watson Private Investigation Services based in Central Texas. So with Dave's help and expertise, we're going to go down how private investigation services can be used in family law matters, as well as address some of the concerns and questions we get from clients regarding their personal privacy, surveillance, and devices used by their spouse. So that's something we see come up in cases, so we thought it would be an interesting topic. So Dave, thanks for being here. And I want to start by turning it over to you. And can you tell us kind of your background and how you got into this work of being a private investigator?
Yeah, sure, Jake. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm a retired Los Angeles police officer. And when I retired from LAPD, I actually had an uncle that lived in Texas. I'm not from Texas. And I came out here on vacation and decided I was going to move out here. And then once I got out here, I started my business here. During my tenure with LAPD, I did a lot of different things. I was a training officer. I worked undercover narcotics, undercover vice. I worked Metropolitan Division, which is the division in LAPD that handles SWAT, K-9, mounted unit, all the specialized units within LAPD. And then I worked my way up to become a sergeant. I was a watch commander. I worked Rampart Division for a while. I worked all over the city. But once I moved here, I decided to take a little bit of that experience I had and open up a business and start my investigation company here.
Oh, that's great. And I know you and I have worked together, Lord, I think probably since when I started practicing 14, 15 years ago. So definitely a ton of experience.
I've been in business since 2003.
Okay. Yeah. And so you were in business a few years before I started practicing law. And then I know, I've working for the firm Piper Turner way back when, and we used to use you, and I know I've used you and referred you ever since then because of the work that you've done. So talk to me about when you get the call and it's a family lawyer or somebody going through a divorce or a custody case, what type of work do you sort of focus on or when are you usually getting the phone call and what type of work are you doing for folks?
Well, usually when I get the phone call from a family law attorney, it's usually some sort of surveillance work. So from that time, I usually take the information from the lawyer. I'll contact the client. They'll fill out a form for me. I'll get a lot of intel from them before I start, and then I'll conduct surveillance. And there's a lot of different issues that we're dealing with. So once I find out what the issue is, I kind of hone in that on my surveillance. The one thing about your firm and what you do really well is you know how to use what I get. So when I get video surveillance or I get something that's going to be useful to the client, it's good to have an attorney that knows how to use it, then apply that in court.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can be a wide range, right? I mean, ranging from, we've had cases together, and I know you work on cases where maybe a spouse suspects the other spouse of infidelity, and, you get the phone call from that. Child custody concerns, whether or not somebody's consuming alcohol or taking the kids around something they're not supposed to be doing. I've certainly had cases like that. I mean, I've had cases, frankly, I won't go into any specifics, but I know there's been cases that, kind of your role in it really kind of made the case, frankly. I mean, I won't come into too many details, but a specific one that comes to mind is a few years ago, I know we had a client that came in and her husband had gone down to the courthouse and got an emergency order that said she can't be around the kids. And his whole deal was that she drinks too much and so she's unsafe with the kids. And I know you followed him for a couple of weeks because there's a couple of weeks when my client wasn't seeing the kids because of this emergency order. So dad had the kids 100% of the time and you followed him. And as I recall the surveillance, it was every single day after work, dad going to get a 12-pack of beer and going home, 12-pack or more. And then testified in court that he wasn't consuming alcohol, not knowing that you had been following him. And then you came in and had obviously the proof and the pictures and everything. But that's just an example of many over the years, right? That, it really is sort of crucial evidence to have in a case, and it really can turn the whole situation around.
Yeah, there's so many issues. It's either an alcohol use, drug use, infidelity. It also goes into a lot of times where one of the spouses involved in the divorce are seeing somebody, and that person that they're seeing has a criminal record and is not safe to be around the children. So a lot of times,
will you do background checks and everything?
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll follow somebody, and then once I follow them, I take down license plate numbers of anybody they have contact with. And that's all followed by the video surveillance, and I take that plate, I run it, then I conduct a criminal background check, and I include that in the report with the surveillance so we know who the person is.
Well, don't give me all of your secrets, but tell me generally, how do you kind of follow somebody, and what's that look like from your perspective? Is it 24/7? Are you spot checking? Do you have tools that you use?
Well, I can tell you from my experience, I work narcotics and vice for years with LAPD, and that's all you do is surveillance work. It's all intelligence gathering. So following people's kind of an art. You have to find out their driving habits. Do they signal? Do they not signal? Do they drive fast, slow? Things like that. And the reason why that's important is because if I'm following you and you put on your signal, I'll just get in front of you. I won't follow you from behind. I'll follow you when you're behind me because you'll put on your signal each time, and then I'll turn around with you. Now, surveillance is kind of tricky because you don't have control over a lot of the outside environment. There's red lights, there's traffic, there's construction on roads. But the more you do this, the more you get an instinct for it, and it becomes easier and easier. So it's an art that takes time to develop over the years. You do lose people, though. It's part of the game. But the more you do it, the more successful you become at it.
What about tracking devices? And we'll talk about clients who think they have tracking devices on them, but I think that can get kind of hairy putting one on somebody else. What's your thoughts about using a tool like that?
Well, as a private investigator, I can't put a tracking device on a car. The car has to be registered to you. And now, if you want to put a tracking device, I believe you're the attorney here. If you want to put a tracking device on one of your cars, I don't believe you're breaking any laws, but somebody from the third party can't put a tracking device on another person's car. Now, I do get a lot of calls from people who think they have tracking devices on the car.
Yeah. So let's talk about that because, you're right. From the attorney perspective, first of all, it can be, I always tell people, obviously, you need to consult with a lawyer. If you're going to put a tracking device, even on a car that's registered in your name, obviously never do it on a car that's not in your name. Even one on your name, I think that can be... It's very fact specific, right? Because, depending on where you're at in the divorce, it could be considered stalking. It may, and frankly, it may not be necessary, right? If you have a good PI like you, there's nothing illegal about, having Dave follow somebody. That's a way better option than putting a tracking device on somebody's car. And then, you're picking up information about when they're meeting with their lawyer or stuff like that. I generally don't like it, but regardless, talk to a lawyer first. But yeah, to your point, somebody comes to you and says, I think my spouse is tracking me. He or she always knows where I'm at, or I just get that sense that they're doing. I know we give you those phone calls a lot. I mean, frankly, I don't mind sharing. I had somebody on the other side of a case that was doing it to my client and making comments about me and my family. And I know you came to my house and checked on my vehicles, but talked to me, which I really appreciated. Made me feel a lot safer. But tell me about, those phone calls that you get.
Yeah, I usually get those phone calls where people think, and a lot of times when they're going through a heated divorce, a lot of people call me because they just want peace of mind. They think, okay, maybe there's something on my car and I'll come check. Now, I would probably say 10, 15% of the time I actually find them. The other times it's usually something else. Somebody in their family is telling somebody where they were or something like that. But the tracking devices are used in divorces. I have seen them. I've recovered them. What to look for is it's like a 60-pound magnet. It's probably about 3 inches by 2 inches. And they usually stick it up underneath the car on the metal frame. It's got to be on metal. It's got to stick on metal there. It's usually hidden. I'll even tell you where they're hidden. A lot of times they're hidden where the gas tank is, right behind the gas tank on the rear beam. Because when you look under the car, you actually can't see it. So I do find them on occasion. And then there's the issue of what do we do when we find them? So what I do is I don't touch it. I call the local police. I let them take it, book it into evidence, and then I contact the attorney.
What other types of things have you seen over the years of people sort of tracking their spouses or trying to surveil them, or maybe in a nefarious way, like a GPS device? What other things have you seen over the years?
The little, what do they call those little Apple tags? The Apple tags are becoming real famous now in tracking. That I'm seeing more and more of. I
see that a lot too, where people will drop them in their spouse's car because they're just that round, right? And then because then if you get caught too, it's it fell out of my pocket, right? I didn't mean to do that, or you put it in the kid's backpack or something like that. So how do you check for those? Yeah, well, it's easier to do because the iPhone, they're connected to the iPhone. So when you get close to them, they will actually start beeping. They'll actually beep. So they're a lot easier to find. That's why I think people use the trackers. They hide underneath the car if they want, because those batteries can last anywhere from 30. You can buy an extra pack battery lasts for 60 days. Mm-hmm. So you're able to track somebody for a long period of time with those, and they're precise. They'll actually give the address that you're at. And back when you're to the issue, if you're following somebody or surveilling them and checking behavior, I get sort of following them in a car. Are you taking photographs or videos when you do this? And how do you accomplish that with somebody? Again, I'm thinking back to this case that we had. I know there was pictures of you. Somehow you managed to get pictures of Dad purchasing the alcohol in the gas station every single day, and you were but for 2 feet from him and still getting some pretty good pictures. So how do you pull that off? It's really odd. I'm 6'3", 225 pounds. You would think you see me, right? You've seen me. But I don't know. I think I've been doing it for so long. I have a knack of just being there and not being there. There's certain mannerisms that you can have as a private investigator. You have to look completely distracted from the person you're following. And I think people sometimes get too honed in on what they're doing, and they pay too much attention to what they're doing. And you can pay attention without looking like you're paying attention. It's just years of experience. When you work undercover and you got to pretend you're somebody else for so long, it's kind of second nature to you. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, do you have other investigators that you work with, or is it just you? No, I've got 2 other investigators that I work with. I have a female that works for me because sometimes females are really needed in this business, when you need that. And I got another person that works for me, and they do a lot of my surveillances now. But clients like you that I have, that I've known, that I've been working for years, I do those personally. I appreciate that. And we'll get to your contact in a second. But to wrap up, I was telling you before, I was preparing for this podcast, and I was thinking about one of my favorite stories with a private investigator, right? And we were talking about that before we started. So for our listeners, I was probably a 2-year associate, 1 or 2 year associate, so pretty young lawyer, working for Jim Piper. Client came in, I'll change the details a little bit, but client came in and her husband had been arrested for assaulting her. So he had a protective order against him. Wasn't supposed to have guns, those types of things. And she's, talking to Jim, very, and I'm the associate on it. She's very distraught and upset as she should be, and fearful as she should be. And, the plan was we were going to file for, I think she had gotten an emergency protective order, so we were going to file for a more permanent protective order for her. Her husband was out of town for a business trip, and so we were going to file over the weekend and serve him Monday morning, but she was sort of going through, and she's meeting with Jim probably Friday at 3:00 or something like that. And then she's just sort of talking about the assets that we have. And she kind of says, well, and he's not supposed to have guns. There's still guns in the house. And I'm like, okay, that's not good. We need to get some evidence on that. And then she said, and by the way, there's a floor safe that he will never tell me what's in it. Of course, Jim perks up and says, well, we got to go check that out. So I think you got the call, Dave. And we ended up going over there with the locksmith, and you, as I recall, you inventoried the guns, and the locksmith drilled a big old hole in that safe, which took a few hours, and and we fished about $400,000 worth of gold coins out of that safe. And I can't remember how many guns you inventoried, but there was a lot of guns. Yeah, I remember the. Feeling a lot safer with having you there, because it was probably about 10 or o'clock at night, and the husband was out of town, so we felt okay. But there was always a little bit of doubt that he'd come knocking on that door, though. But I remember getting a phone call, but now my ex-wife and my wife at the time calling, just going, well, I'm just really concerned about you being there. By the way, it's me there. Like, where's Jim at? I'm just a 2-year lawyer. That's my job to do that. But her giving me a call, I'm just really concerned, you being there. That feels unsafe. I'm like, well, Dave's here. And looking around at the weapons we have in here, we have enough ammunition and guns to hold off the first wave of Omaha Beach. So I think we're going to be okay. But yeah, we inventoried there had to be 500 firearms in there, $400,000 worth of gold. This is before things were really electronic. So we went through the office and got a bunch of paperwork and threw it in a laundry basket. And then we ran out of there like pirates, carrying gold and documents and papers and everything. So
yeah, that's true.
I tell that story a lot to people thinking about coming into family law. I just go, it's a really big range. I don't think I would send any of my associates to go do that. That's probably that. If we're going to do that, that probably falls on me personally if I'm going to sign anybody up for that. But yeah, Jim was like, yeah, Jake will do that. No problem. So that was a really fun story that, and you did a really good job on that one. I really appreciate it. Of course, then husband came home Monday morning, protective order application waiting for him, all his guns sort of strewn out and inventoried and stuff. And then, big old hole in his floor safe, which I'm sure he would have told his wife and disclosed that he had hundreds of thousands of dollars of gold coins if we hadn't done that. Of course, Jim couldn't help himself. It was Michael Burnett, who's a great lawyer in town. Michael ended up representing the husband. Calls Jim Monday afternoon. Like, hey, my client just hired me, and he wants to know where all the gold coins are from the safe. And Jim couldn't help himself. It's just like, oh, what gold coins? But then we inventory them and everything. But fun times. It's a fun job sometimes, a lot of the times. So, well, to wrap up, so if I'm a lawyer trying to contact you, or if I'm a client looking to hire you directly, what's the best way of getting a hold of you?
My website is watsonpiinvestigation.com, and my business line is 512-801-9754.
Great. Well, we'll put that information in the description. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you doing it. So we'll wrap up with that, folks, and we appreciate everybody joining us. Again, if you're interested in reaching out to Dave, we'll have his website and contact information in the podcast description. As always, for us, if you have any follow-up questions regarding this episode, or you want to talk to one of our lawyers about your family law situation, you can reach out to us at podcast@waltersgilbreath.com, or you can contact us directly through our website at waltersgilbreath.com. So we appreciate all y'all listening. We'll see y'all next time.
Thank you.
For information about the topics covered in today's episode and more, you can visit our website at waltersgilbreath.com. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of For Better, Worse, or Divorce, where we post new episodes every first and third Wednesday. Do you have a topic you want discussed or a question for our hosts? Email us at podcast@waltersgilbreath.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time.